Hello everyone, this is James Shore with another test-driven JavaScript video. I'm recording this on August 11th, 2012. It's been about a week and a half since I last recorded. And when we left off in the last video, we had just finished getting our HTTP server tested and running. And, you know, looking at this, I'm reasonably happy with this code. I think that there's actually a pretty good chance that there's some stuff I don't know will lead to defects or other issues with the code. So in the future, we'll probably want to do some exploratory testing on it. The test code is okay, but it's a little complex. And again, I think as we work with this more, we'll discover ways of making it better. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the progress we've made here. Now what I want to do is finish off this engineering task. That will finish off this story, possibly. I also want to modify the build script to enforce the Node version and integrate. We need to enforce the Node version because this code here does not work on previous versions of Node. So we really need to make sure we're doing that in our script so that, you know, if it's just me, then obviously I know what the issue is. I can fix it. But somebody else downloading this code or in a team environment, when you make this kind of change, it's not good enough to just write a README and then hope people will read it, because people don't read documentation. They only read unless they need to. They don't look at stuff unless they've been forced to. So what I want to do is modify the build script to say you have to take an action. That way, the failure I want the failure to be you've got the wrong version of Node, not I couldn't connect to the server, which is what we were seeing before. So that, I think, comes into the idea of keeping our maintenance costs low. It's not just about how you write the code, it's also about how you interact with other team members. And I don't have any other team members, but we're going to pretend I do. So everything should be working. It is. We should have nothing to commit, so we've got everything clean here. So let's go ahead and write this enforcement. So let me just shut everything else down. Here's our Jake file. And what I want to do is say that our tests depend on Node being present. And that means well, I was going to say ensure correct version of Node is present. Like this. And that will work, of course. We could say Jake Node. And if we run, then we'll see that go. You can see here, it's happening after lint. And actually, lint depends on Node as well, doesn't it? So they both depend on Node. By the way, notice here how the Node stuff here line is only running once. That's one of the essential features of a build system like Jake or Rake or Make, is they analyze your dependencies and then only run the dependencies once. So this is making sure that the Node stuff happening at the right spot, and then we're good. So now the reason I was pausing on this before is that if you give a task a description, it will show up here. If we didn't give it a description, it wouldn't show up. And I was just thinking, do we want that to be a sort of top-level target? Somebody who's new to the project will come along, run Jake-T to figure out what they can do. Is Node so crucial that that's something that people will be running independently? And I think the answer to that question is no, actually. I don't think Node is so important that it needs to show up as a top-level task. So I'm going to keep the description out and move this down here. And I think the way I'll document what this task does is just by having the commented out description. That way, if I change my mind later, I could do that. And it's pretty obvious, I think, to somebody who knows Jake what's going on here. So One thing we need to be careful with in our Jake file is that as we add more and more things, it will get more and more complicated. And it's really easy to let a make file or rake file or Jake file sort of grow without bound to the point where it becomes a real maintenance problem. And so I don't think we're there yet, but we're starting to get close. So we need to keep an eye on that. We might need to do some refactoring of this at some point. On the other hand, and this is why it always becomes a problem, I really want to just move on. I want to get to the point where we actually have a cross-functional walking or a cross-system walking skeleton, a vertical slice through our whole application. And doing good refactoring of this stuff would probably take us another episode or two, and I want to move on. And that's what happens with your make files. It never feels important. So you let cruft accumulate it in a way that you don't let cruft accumulate in production or even test code. So it's just something to keep an eye out for. All right, so what I want to do is I want to run this and compare and see that what we're getting out of that is exactly this string. When I see that we're already node changes pretty quick. We've already got a new version out since the last time I installed that. So now I could say this version or higher, but I think, yeah, I'm not sure how I want to deal with that. I mean, if this was a real project, I'd just say it must be this version done. But for you guys, since you could be running your own node, that may be too strict. We'll start out by doing an exact comparison, and then we might want to say this version or higher. So what we need to do is run that process. And that is unfortunately not as easy as we might want it to be. Running shell commands. So because Node is so asynchronous, we can't just, in Rake we could just say backtick node dash dash version backtick, and I think we could do something like, output equals node, and then we'd be done. And that would be much nicer. That would be really nice. Unfortunately, we can't do that. We're going to have to use this jake.exec command. The way that works is we run jake.exec and we pass in the command we want. So our command is going to be and then we pass in the function that will get called when it's done. And we can pass some options in with that as well. So let's have it print standard out, make that true, and print standard error, make that true as well. And then what we have to do is tell Jake that the task is done when we get that call back. And then we have to say that the task is asynchronous. Yeah, not exactly node dash dash version. This is all this crap just to do that. And that's not even the beginning of it. So let's see what happens when we run this. So I'm just going to run the node command. Okay, so it tells us, it gives us our output, but I actually like my shell scripts to be more explicit about what they're doing, so we'll do that. Yeah. So now, I mean, it's running node.version, and that's great. But, and so if we run the whole thing, we'll see it do node.version. But now we need to check it. And unfortunately, we don't get the information back. We have to see what's coming out on standard error, and we don't get that back. So we actually have to use create exec, which is a little bit more complicated. Create exec gives us a process-ish back that is in fact, let's see, let's keep this around just in case. So we're going to create exec. That's going to give us an event emitter. Pass that command through. And pass our options through. I still want all these options, I think. And then we're going to listen. We're going to say on command end do something. And in this case, we'll just say we're done. Well, it kind of worked, but I didn't see this coming out. Oh, and we have to run it. There. So let's just run the... So there, we can see it finishing like it's supposed to, and that's good. But we also need to capture the output, and the way we can do that is by getting the standard out code. Now this actually streams the standard out, but since we've only got one line, I'm going to just sort of hope. Well, no. So let's go ahead and we'll start out by making the standard out nothing. And then what happens here is it just streams it to us. We'll just collect those chunks of data. And then here in command end, we'll say what we got. And that's where we can do our test. Yeah. So now we can say if standard out does not exactly equal version 0.8.4, we will fail incorrect node version, expected desired node version. And I think that will work. Except it didn't. I bet you we need a... Yeah, there we go. So if I change that to 0.8.6, it will say expected 0.8.6. So there we go. We need to clean this up. That's what we'll do next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. I will catch you next time.